Hi there, my name's James Heidema, and today we're doing part 4 of the sales process. Now, part 4 of the sales process is in the second interview. What we've done in the previous 3 videos, the first one we did the introduction of our services, which in my case was a story that laid the sort of foundation for the relationship. Then part 2 was the gap analysis, where we looked at their current situation, their desired situation. We got them to speak about their gap. We agreed on an amount of money that we were going to use as an example to begin to address the gap. And then we also talked about positioning of prospects, asking for referrals. Then the third part was the part where we reviewed the gap analysis in the second appointment, where we went back and we looked at the current situation. We got the client to read through it. We got the client to actually verbally announce what the gap was from their point of view. We got them to remember what the dollar amount or the euro amount that we were going to address this with. And then we moved on to part 4, which is today. Part 4 is where we begin to position the product. Okay? So, just a little background on positioning of the product. Our job as financial advisors is to advise. And so we have to help the customer prioritize what is the right thing to do. Now, if I'm dealing with a single person, I certainly understand that life insurance is not the most important thing for them to do, that they tend to be interested in savings, investment, and building capital. And so that's probably where I would go in the beginning with them, is get them to adopt the habit of saving and investing. If I'm dealing with someone in a relationship, and certainly someone who has a child or more children, that they indeed must look at life insurance primarily, and then savings investments secondarily. So why life insurance? Well, because if something were to happen to the key individuals in a family and there was no life insurance place, certainly there would be a change of lifestyle. Certainly the family could not continue to do the things that it did before, when the person was contributing to the income of the family. So life insurance would be at the top of my list as an advisor, because not only life insurance, but critical illness and accident, because, you know, the cemeteries are filled with people who didn't plan to be there, and so are the hospitals. And so we have no control over our future. We can be as careful as we can be, but things do happen to individuals. And so that's first thing, is we've got to prioritize. We take the amount of money, in this case we're taking 125 euros or dollars, and what we're doing is we're portioning it off in different directions. So I'm going to role play with you. Again, you are the customer and I am the advisor, and we've just finished reviewing the gap. We've agreed you still have a gap. You verbalized the gap. You understood the 125 euros, what that was for, as a baseline of where we're going to start to begin to address your gap. So let's go back to the role play. Okay, let's move on to the next step now. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take into consideration the gap as you verbalized it and address it with some possible solutions. We're not going to talk a lot about the product, although I can answer any questions that you have. The product is nothing more than a solution to a need uncovered in the planning process. So you and I have walked through a process. This is our second interview. We've certainly identified a need, the gap in your case. And now we're going to look at a possible solution. Because you are married and because you have a child, we must first address the issue of life insurance. Now, nobody plans to die. I mean, but have you ever driven by a cemetery? Of course you have. Do you think anybody planned to be there? Well, most people did not. How about hospitals? Are they empty or full? Well, they're certainly full. Again, do you think anybody planned to be there? So people don't plan to fail, they just fail to plan. So what we need to think about is, how much is an appropriate amount of life insurance? Now, in your case, you've got a young daughter who's 2 years of age. Life insurance should last at least through their formative years. So we're talking 10 to 15 years, which affects the amount of insurance. So what you tend to do is you take your annual income and you multiply it by 5 or 10 times to get that amount. That may be too much in the beginning and may take too much of your capital away that we could use in other areas. So I would suggest that an appropriate amount at this point would be 30,000 euros on each of you. And that way that if the worst were to happen, what the gift that you're giving to the family is time to recover or mourn, if you like, and not worry about where's the money coming from. How can we pay our bills? So that's the insurance portion. Next is we're going to take a portion of that 125 and we're going to put some critical illness and accident insurance on both of you, so that if the worst case scenario were to happen, let's say you were in a car accident, you broke your leg and you're on your back for a couple of months, what would happen is we would deliver you a check, and that check would pay your bills during that period of recovery. And finally, we're going to take a portion of that amount, we're going to invest it on your behalf. And we can talk in a few minutes about what that investment may look like. And what that investment will do is it will accumulate over time. Now, in the beginning, there's not going to be a lot of accumulation because we have to set all this stuff up, and that all costs time and money to do that. But eventually, it will accumulate. And maybe at some point in the future, you want some money. Let's say you want 2,000 euros for some reason. You just call us up, we cut you a check. You don't have to explain why, and we'll give you the 2,000 euros, but we encourage you to pay it back. Why? Well, because if you pay it back, it will continue to accumulate, and you can use it over and over again. I've certainly done that in my life. I've used my investments and savings over and over again, but making sure that I pay it back. And so that's what I'm recommending today. A level of life insurance, a level of critical illness, and a level of savings and investment. So can you tell me what you think about that recommendation? Okay? Do you have any questions? Okay, let's talk about that. Okay, anything else? Great, let's do the paperwork. Okay, so what have we done so far? How has this all come together? Stepping out of the role play. So what we've done in the very first meeting, by our behaviors and our methodology and our process, in the very first interview, it's been all about the customer. It's nothing to do with you. You do that brief introduction about how you behave in the marketplace, but beyond that, it's all about them. And the whole purpose of that first interview is to disturb the customer, to find the gaps in their plan, looking at the current situation, their desired situation, getting them to admit there is a gap, getting them to take ownership of the gap, and then setting aside a certain amount of money, which, as I'm recommending, is 5 to 7% of their income. And then we talked a bit about referrals, okay? Then we come into the second appointment, and what we do in the second appointment is we pull up the gap analysis again, and we go through it, and we get them to read the current situation, explain to you if I made a mistake or missed anything, read the desired situation, review it, tell me if I've made any mistakes, and then verbally read what I've written down about the gap. You know, what exactly is important to them. And then remind them of what the 125 is all about. And now we're in a position to begin to make our recommendation. Again, recommending products, and remember this, products are nothing more than a solution to a need uncovered in a planning process. So we want to be very careful that when we talk about the recommendation, it's all about what does it do and how does it behave in any given situation. And so then we walk through life insurance, because this is a couple and they've got a child. Then we did critical illness, and then we did savings and investment. Okay? And the next video, which we're going to do, which is part 5, is we're going to talk about asking for recommendations, which we positioned at the end of the first meeting, but at the end of the second meeting, we will do that. Okay? And again, the close, if people buy into the gap, if they verbalize it and accept there's a gap, the close doesn't have to be a pressure thing. It doesn't have to be, do you want to buy? What I often say to customers when I want them to take action, I say, let's do the paperwork. And most people say, okay, let's do the paperwork, right? And if they don't say yes, then they probably have a question. I'll deal with that, and then we get to yes. I hope that makes sense to you. I hope you find value in this. I wish you all the best. Bye now.